Welcome to video 2, LeanUX Canvas. We'll review section 1 that we started last video, and then we'll go on to see what's included in this video, and we'll have a preview finally of our next video. So, as we saw in the last video, the business model canvas, we have a huge amount of inputs spread out all over the table in piles in front of us, napkins, we made notes on napkins, sophisticated requirements gathering software. What we need to do now is to gather them up together, right, and hold in our hands a UI design, a feature list, and a plan based on the business model canvas that united all the requirements. Now, we've found that the following 3 steps can do this. The business model canvas, what does it do? It gets to the heart of what we actually want to be doing. The LeanUX Canvas, today's video, to map out the journey of getting there, and then the team kickoff, where everything and everybody joins up working together. So now, on to the second step, the LeanUX Canvas. Here's the questions we'll answer. How will the website or web app be instrumental in setting everything in motion? And how will we attain that goal in incremental, iterative, testable steps with the whole team working together instead of in isolated silos and wasting time and effort? The LeanUX Canvas is described here by its creator, Jeff Gothelf. Okay, so he explains all about it, and it's well worth taking a look. This website will be included in the notes right below the video. Check out all the references that we'll be making. It shows the whole process in full swing. Let's take a look. It shows the business problem. And then, now this is not like the business model canvas, right? This is more like the active process of how we're going to get there. So we go from 1 to 2, from 3 to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're done. The first iteration. The first iteration obviously will be our minimum viable product. We go from the business problem, and that will lead supposedly to business outcomes. That's what we want to get. Now, how will you know you solved the business problem? What will you measure? Okay, so what will people and users be doing differently if the solutions actually work? And who are the users? What types, personas, what types of users and customers should you focus on first? And then, for each of these users, what are the outcomes and benefits that they will enjoy? Why would your users seek out your product or service? What benefit would they gain from using it? You know, what are people's real needs? And that's what we want to measure. Now, to do this, we make a bunch of hypotheses. We believe that such and such a business outcome will be achieved if so-and-so user attains such and such a benefit with such and such features. That's every feature has its own hypothesis. And then for each hypothesis, what's the most important thing we need to learn first? What can we test first? What can our minimum viable product test first? So for each hypothesis, we identify its riskiest assumptions. That's what we need to learn first. So we're kind of prioritizing them. And then finally, what's the least amount of work that we need to do to learn the next most important thing? And then we'll actually get down to brass tacks about what a webfactory.com, the remaking of, has on its LeanUX Canvas so far. So, what we're saying is, what's the LeanUX Canvas process flow? Now, at this moment, we have a situation in which a business problem is suffered by users. They need to arrive at business outcomes resulting in user outcomes and benefits. And how do we think we'll get there? Via the solutions we'll build. How will we find out if we're right? By posing a set of hypotheses, having the form that we saw just a moment ago. We believe that business outcomes will be achieved if user attains such and such a benefit with such and such a feature. Now, this is on a per feature basis. Then we take all of these hypotheses, because what we're trying to build is a feature set. We're going to prioritize them in terms of which is the biggest risk. What's the most important thing we need to learn first? Avoid risk. For each hypothesis, we identify its riskiest assumptions. And this is the one that, I'm sure, let's do such and such an awesome feature, but are we, is this really going to modify things? Are people really going to need this? Are they going to achieve benefit, derive value from that? We want to determine the riskiest one because that's the one that's going to cause the whole thing to fail if it's wrong. Now, finally, what's the least amount of work we need to do to learn the next most important thing? We want to design experiments to learn as fast as you can whether your riskiest assumption is true or false. Now, what do you mean experiments? Well, that's what sprints are. Experiments. They're starting points, not completion items. We've got to really get value out of this process flow. LeanUX and the Agile software development process. So we're hugely influenced by Jeff Gothelf's book, LeanUX, Applying Lean Principles to Improve User Experience, as well as by Laura Klein's User Experience for Lean Startups. Now, this process flow is what has to motorize the team's coordinated behavior. Not just overall, not just in some abstract fashion, but iteratively and incrementally in each cycle, right? Now, let's take a look at the LeanUX process and team workflow cycle in a nutshell, just so we get it right. We start out with the outcomes we want to get to, the assumptions we're making, hypotheses, the feature list, and then we design it, and then we create an MVP, the whole team working together. And then when we have the MVP functioning and it's deployed, we're going to have to start research and learning. We're going to research, find out what's going on. Maybe we're going to pivot something. Maybe we're going to learn some new stuff to get this done properly. Then we'll go through the whole process again. This is the process that we're going to come back to again and again every time we want to make a change. So desired outcomes, assumptions, hypotheses, features, worked out and specified by the whole team. We're going to do stuff like design studio in the next video, worked on together by everyone. The minimum viable product on the basis of the feature set and the design implemented by the whole team working together. Then the testing, the research, the learning done all together, right? Then we'll be ready to iterate over the next cycle as required. Now, here we have a big question. Is Agile enough? In other words, this cycle looks a lot like Agile, right? So if we just use Agile, we're all set, right? Or is Agile the new waterfall? We all know about the waterfall process, analysis. We do all our analysis, design, all our design, 50 features, the coding, all the coding, do the testing, all the testing. So what Agile proposes is to break this down into a series of iterations, and we can test stuff as we go on. So waterfall has clearly been identified as a poor engineering process for projects based heavily upon rapidly shifting and pivoting user requirements. It may be great for building bridges, but not when the requirements are changing as we're getting it done. These requirements in a web app project will change a minimum of 40% during the lifetime of, say, a 3-month project. And using waterfall has been assessed as causing very high failure rates when it comes to delivering value. In fact, people just start implementing without any kind of analysis and design at all. They don't even make use of the engineering discipline of waterfall. In actual fact, they start the coding before there's been any analysis or design. Right? That's the reality. You know, people come, okay, let's start coding. Okay, this is famous. So, enter Agile and the Agile Manifesto. In fact, I'm very proud to say that in 2006, I actually did sign the Agile Manifesto. Here I am, Victor Kane, a web factory. Building software must be built around real human needs, and neither the product nor the process shoved down people's throats. The need for software and the need to produce that software must be framed in a process, the process mirrored in the product, Hudson, is optimized by open flowing structures reflecting those very real needs and their most excellent solutions. Obstacles imposed by greed and the need to defend privilege must be removed. Working people who produce and use software must together manage that process themselves, worldwide. Really proud of that statement. However, Agile still has shortcomings in web application projects if not tailored correctly. For example, we still need to find out how to manage the 7 wastes of Agile software development. It's a great article, should definitely go into it. It's on the list. I'll just summarize these 7 sources of waste in Agile. Unfinished work is left rotting in isolated silos. Feature creep without validating for impact or value. Isolated silos keep on reinventing the wheel. And the big one, handoffs chronically disrupt workflow. Delays, because isolated silos and teams may be missing skills they need. Also, task switching, because work overload and broken workflow results from that. Mucho defect, because chaotic focus and blocked knowledge sharing. As Jeff Gothelf points out, using staggered sprints is a good first step. So in staggered sprints, we make sure that everybody prepares to be working on stuff, and we don't have this delay from the handoff, for example. So we plan and gather all of the data from the customer, right, in the first cycle before we start. So in cycle 1, there's a developer track and an interaction designer track and a developer track. Implement on the developer track high dev cost, low UI cost features. Why? Based on the needs that have been gathered. Some analysis and design is done. In the meantime, on the designer track, design goes on. And 2 steps are taken. On the one hand, design for cycle 2, so that the developer can finish cycle 1 and go right on to implementation of the design in cycle 2 and 3 in the same way, right? And while the developer track is implementing cycle 2, for example, the previous cycle is tested, the next cycle that the developer track will get to is design, and more customer data is gathered. Okay, so this is called a staggered approach. Jeff, however, puts forward a solution garnered from his own experience. This relies on collaboration and participation. So we have here a theme. We have several 2-week sprints. So we have several sprints joined together. We have in green sketching ideation. We have in purple iteration planning. And then we also have testing usability value from the client, working with the team during the sprint. So we'll see now the details of this. So we've seen a series of 2 or 3 sprints related by a basic feature set under the unifying umbrella of theme. The whole team participates together in a mini kickoff marked in green at the beginning, right? This involves sketching and brainstorming, right? And that precedes the theme itself, as well as each of the additional sprints forming part of it. The ideas, sticky notes, wireframe diagrams, paper prototypes, anything else we have, all the output from the team kickoff, right, serves as input for an iteration planning meeting, which precedes each sprint. And this is marked in dark red. This purple dark red is the planning meeting, right? And in this way, the whole team will kind of be working even more together than in the staggered approach. Finally, a constant stream of customer feedback is guaranteed by the weekly validation schedule. So if this is a 2-week sprint, there's never a week goes by without there being feedback during that sprint. This setup gives everyone, developers and designers and the client alike, all of them have plenty of time for creativity without working in isolation, especially if we're intelligent enough to use Kanban instead of the sprints method, right? A Kanban board, and again, I won't go into full detail on this, but instead of having 2-week sprints, you can just have work in progress, because you've got to have some channel, right? So the channel can be an arbitrarily set 2-week period, or even a period of time based on the results of the team working together before. But instead of doing that as a restriction, let's just say, here's our backlog, and here we got what's in progress, and we limit that to 3 things in any one time, right? And only one thing can be in test at a time. Okay, and that way it'll take the time it needs. It'll be ready when it's ready. In the case of Kanban, we have a work in progress rhythm, ensuring focus rather than the strict time restricted sprints employed when using Scrum. So that's basically the idea there. So this is the key to how the Agile process may be properly motorized, and the key to how LeanUX Canvas may really make a difference. Now, what does the canvas look like for this project, for our migration of a webfactory.com? Here's the LeanUX Canvas for the remaking of a webfactory.com. We're going to see the business problem, the business outcomes, the users, user outcomes and benefits, the solutions, the hypothesis. Then, for each one of them, what's the most important thing? What's the least amount of work we need to do to learn the next most important thing? The business problem. What problem does the business have that you're trying to solve? Okay, so here's a problem. My current offerings. There are no current offerings except in my professional blog made in Drupal 6. The last post was in 2015 in August, or maybe in the mentoring section. So here's my professional blog. And, you know, working in winter quarters to migrate a webfactory.com to new architecture. Okay, so I was busy working with Code Mentor. I was busy with a bunch of stuff, but, you know, right now I'm out of business. And in the mentoring section, mentoring at a web factory. So here we offer mentoring, cool, but we're not campaigning this right now. We even have some functionality problems. No links work in a list of topics. There's a pay now PayPal link in a contact form. Actually clicking on it actually fails to send the mail. To all intents and purposes, we're out of business. Now, there's also been changes in the market. Death of the monolith. Businesses have moved their models to the web. Businesses are making much more complex web applications online, moving their offices online, rather than just making websites. And the complexity of those web apps has increased immensely. JavaScript and other technologies have grown by leaps and bounds. Even Microsoft and Google have gotten together to agree that TypeScript is going to be the next best thing after JavaScript. Structured contents come along. The death of the printing page of Gutenberg as the paradigm, you know, for a page on the web. So you can't just offer 3-month courses on a single topic. Let's learn Angular. That used to work in 2015. Now, everything's much more complex. People actually want to get some very specific, tailored needs answered, right? So we have to organize ourselves in a way that we can cater to that. All it is really is that people are goal-oriented and sometimes not so clearly goal-oriented. So, in our delivery channels, we're going to have courses, learning paths, learning steps. So, you know, we can have like long videos broken down into little steps that can be referenced in many different ways according to the tailored learning path that someone needs. That's a cool idea. I bet you that would be good, or not. That's what we have to test. We have competitive threats, explosion in the number of people offering training and courses, in the number of Udemys. Not so much in the number of real mentors per se, though. So we're still offering mentoring. We have shorter attention span on the part of customers and clients, because people are really like butterflies flicking from plant to plant, because they have, they got an interview next week and they need such and such a thing. What should they stress? What should they go for? Right? People desperate to find work for lower wages and longer work days, panicking over the interviews. That's the kind of backdrop we have. And that's the needs we've got to learn to cater to. Now, what business outcomes are we actually expecting by remaking a webfactory.com? For starters, outcomes include, we want to see a surge in visitors and the time they spend on the site. This is measurable. We want to see a concrete response to social networking campaigns, inquiries about coaching, training, mentoring, and consulting services. Plus, we want to see an initial onboarding of learners and clients willing to pay for professional offerings. Then, we would expect to see growth and retention of those paying for offerings. In other words, one of the things that we're seeing as a problem and feeling as a pain point, it lasts a maximum of 3 months. How can we make sure we're getting feedback about what's really going on with the courses, with the mentoring? We need to do a lot of testing and research, plus several iterations of MVP. That's what's going to be necessary. Okay, so now what type of users do we actually want to focus on? Okay, we have a content seeker, a job provider, and an agency seeker. Okay, so the content seeker is generally focused on content. I'm looking for some answers to questions right now. Someone who trains themselves, uses a Web Factory content, the new Web Factory content, because the old content may be very quaint and interesting, but it's not going to help them now. And they don't necessarily want to be a member of the community or the site. They don't necessarily need any services, or they may be wanting to evaluate the services. So that's one persona that we definitely need to cater to. Job seeker, someone who's seeking employment as a web developer, individual or group, seeking job readiness through mentorship. Now, what is mentorship again? It's a project-based, not blah, blah, blah. Project-based training through content, coach, trainer, and or mentor. Okay, so members of project teams working on a project, seeking on-team mentorship individually or on a team level. I need to train alone or with a coach, or work with a mentor, or we need to do that. I need to do it to get a job or to work on a project. I need to train in order to acquire a specific skill set, because they're going to be moving over to Ugo or no Eleventy, no Gatsby, or something new. In order to be able to join a team working on a given project, I need to monitor my nearness to goals. Okay, so people, it's not just they need to take courses, they need to see if the courses are, how can they monitor whether they're actually being helped by this? Okay, maybe they need to pair up with other members of the community, right? Maybe they're interested in looking for work via a job provider. So we could cater to job providers who are going to provide jobs for job seekers, and a Web Factory could be a community for this, right? So a job provider has a medium to large size agency or company, a small to medium business, organization, etc., right? And they need to build teams or teams of teams for web development projects. They need to find job seekers who have a given skill set, okay? So this will be cool. They need to publish a paid project so job seekers will apply. I need to hire a web factory services so my team can get, a deployed project as a deliverable, get it all ready. Okay, so that's one thing. Another persona is somebody who's going to set up their own agency. So they need to organize themselves, an individual, a small group, or startup seeking self-employment by creating or managing a one-man or small development agency. Okay, so these are the different kinds of personas that we want to be taking into account. What are the user outcomes and benefits? Okay, so why would these users seek out a web factory? So they want to beat full stack JavaScript desperation and burnout, right? Through content that we're going to make that demystifies, right? Like hopefully this video demystifies, how we prepare, what kind of process we actually use to get stuff done. And how this is going to be actually drilled down. We're actually going to get some coding done. We want to demystify the whole process, right? So that the people who come can gain competence and confidence with project-based, dependency-free, goal-driven learning paths. Okay? By dependency-free, we're trying to get away from needing to pay for such and such a hosting, for such and such an editor, for such and such a compiler, and these are all, headless, and you just have to pay for everything. We're trying to get people to do it yourself. People can actually feel confident that they can set up their own systems as they move forward in their goal-driven learning paths. Plus the ability to track and monitor their progress. And we want to demystify not only skills acquisition for the whole team, but also the complexity of getting web apps done, getting used to all the different skills that are required, getting used to bringing projects to reality through process tailored to your needs, as well as minimalistic deployment. We want to eliminate the bogus need to depend on third-party services that own your stuff and elevate costs unreasonably, often only to disappear by magic sometimes. So these are the user outcomes. This is what we are offering that we think, that other people aren't. And we believe, when we get to the hypotheses here in a minute, we're going to have to formulate these as hypotheses that can be tested. Now, what solutions can we actually build? So, for problems facing a job seeker, we need a lot of content resources and live learning services, offering content that convinces a content seeker to get started on a web factory by signing up, choosing an initial goal, and self-training along a project-based learning path, made up of goal-oriented learning steps. So we're going to have, for each learning step, an article, a video, a code repo. Cool. None of you paying for the whole course, and then you get to download ridiculous chunks instead of learning how to use Git while you're learning everything else. Subsequently, we want to convince with our solution the content seeker to become a fully fledged member, because there'll always be free stuff, but maybe they could become a fully fledged member job seeker with the possibility of adding progress monitoring, unlocking the whole matrix of learning steps, possible learning paths and courses, not just taking one course for what I think I need now, but being able to create little learning steps which cut across videos and cut across repos, right? As well as one-on-one or group coaching, training, mentoring sessions, right? There, the difference between a content seeker and a job seeker usage, the content seeker can choose between alternate learning paths, which a job seeker, a member, can create fully tailored learning paths of their own, right? They can download printable book formats and maybe count on some mentoring time at the same time. So that's a possibility. So now, for problems facing a job provider and an agency seeker, content resources and a full range of learning resources, project and process engineering, as well as consulting services are offered. Everything referring to a content seeker seeking membership in order to foster online learning and live coaching, training, and mentoring services on an individual, group, and project level, plus project completion via onboard mentoring, where a web factory joins your team with a project with the option of skills-oriented consulting services, also offering development process, DevOps, and architectural deliverables. So we can, on the one hand, join your team and be a mentor with you, or we can offer services and deliver deliverables. So those are all the different solutions we could provide. So if we combine all of this into hypotheses, we're going to come up with this number of hypotheses here. We believe that a surge in visitors and time on the site will be achieved if a content seeker is attracted because the content is aligned with their goals, finds out more and more about a web factory and begins to consider the options available, okay? And we have to measure that, right? All of this will be explained in the searchable content and learning paths to be found in the authoring, right? Okay. Because we'll have a roadmap. We believe that concrete response to social networking campaigns will be achieved if a content seeker is shown to be moved by the content so as to register for landing page offerings. And we'll be able to do this with a well-made landing page shown to lead to adequate content. Okay. This is measurable. We believe that inquiries concerning learning and consulting services will emerge and grow if a content seeker recognizes their own goals and learning paths related to them in the offerings, with the feature of the learning and services onboarding procedure and navigation behind the learning matrix, right? Based on some kind of development roadmap. We believe that onboarding of learners and clients willing to pay for offerings will initially emerge if the content seeker enjoys positive results, including advance in both competence and confidence, with content packages making up both free and paid customizable learning steps and paths, right? Involving articles, videos, and code, repos, always open and free, coaching, training, mentoring hours, paths, project-based composed of these steps, plus the possibility of tracking real progress, really immerse a content seeker in a truly demystifying experience where they see they gain competence and confidence in a project, right? So with that feature, we can hope for onboarding. we can expect a growth and retention of those paying for offerings if a job seeker is able to create, maintain, and track their own goals in a demystifying context of good coaching, training, and mentoring, with easy to use and beautiful interfaces and excellent content in the learning matrix. So this is something that we're going to enjoy designing and actually getting done and actually using, and then we can expect these business outcomes for these users. We can also, for a job provider, expect a growth and retention of those paying for offerings if a job provider is able to create, maintain, and track their own project goals and project team progress in a demystifying context of onboard coaching, training, mentoring that joins their team, with easy to use and beautiful interfaces in the project process matrix, plus an enticing landing page which can be used for campaigns from day one on. Okay, so these are the hypotheses that are related to the feature set that we're going to iterate towards. Now, what's the most important thing we need to learn first? For each of these hypotheses, we're going to identify the riskiest assumptions. You see, we can't do all of this, can we, in a minimum viable product? We just can't do all of it. Here's where a web factory had meetings, decided, what are we going to do first? This is really cool, but it's complex. What are we going to take on first? Let's determine the riskiest one. The one where if it fails, we're not really going to have much of an income. So which is it? This is the assumption that will cause the entire idea to fail if it's wrong. So the hypotheses in the preceding section are already ordered in terms of each one being a dependency, right? But let's break the rules. For such a large project that's going to take a very long time to complete, or maybe, it's never going to be completed, I don't know. I think that to get started, we should do the least risky features that will be certain to create revenue. So in a sense, the least risky is something that will create revenue as quickly as possible, right? So here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan. Let's get the site up and running with the old content on full stack architecture. And then let's get publishing the making of this site in step-by-step packages in order to attract a job provider who will put me on their team as a mentor. So I think the best thing to do here is, whereas the end result is that we'd love to create a whole community and have mentors meeting up with job seekers and content seekers, but we're just not going to be able to do that in one fell swoop. So let's make a beeline for an interesting and gritty and demanding and fulfilling objective would be for job providers to put me on their team, right? And I can mentor and be a part of that team and help guarantee that that project gets delivered with value that's intended to solve the business outcomes that the user needs, people's real needs. So here's our first little hypothesis then. Because actually we're not breaking the rules at all. The riskiest hypothesis, the one most difficult to attain, is growth and retention of those paying for offerings if a job provider is able to create, maintain, and track their own project goals and project team progress in a demystifying context of onboard coaching, training, and mentoring that joins their team. So that whole process is going to be brought to the team. And how are we going to do this? With easy to use and beautiful interfaces in the project process matrix, plus an enticing landing page which can be used for campaigns from day one. So we're going to get this done first. So there's a dependency, however. The full package of content for a web factory com, the making of, must be available in this very video series. So all preceding functionality should be put in place. But we must be going for this objective the whole time. In other words, even when we start out, we must have the landing page. The landing page for this hypothesis is the first thing we'll do. This landing page, to be able to attract a job provider to put me on their team, is the first thing we're going to do. We must test it. We must learn from it right from the start. Not breaking the rules at all. Haha. So, what's the least amount of work we need to do to learn the next most important thing? Okay, so we need to do some design experiments to learn as fast as we can, whether the riskiest assumption is true or false. So, okay, here's the plan. Get the site up with legacy content. In parallel, get a webfactory.com, the making of, going as a series of step packages. So with the publication of this video, we have 3 videos out of the 23. Let's get the landing page going for Durable Drupal Content Migration Rescue as a project process matrix on the basis of the progress we're making here, right? And once the first step is up, we can start testing to see if we can interest and then onboard job providers with the tailored process of Durable Drupal Content Migration Rescue, which means we join the team, we help you move from Drupal and the monolith to full stack JavaScript or an interesting Jamstack, and that has to be tested as we do it. Cool. So we've been through, we've got our business problem taken, we've got all of this reviewed. We've reviewed the remaking of a webfactory.com in view of the LeanUX Canvas process flow we're actually going to make. In our next video, the team kickoff, where everything and everybody joins up, lights, camera, action, we will actually have a meeting with you guys, which will be a veritable microcosm of the whole project itself. It must be a complete iteration in itself of the process we've adopted in a single session. So we'll see what the team kickoff involves, and we're looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for joining us on this video.